Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going exploring something pretty incredible, I think.
I think so too.
And that is the Shiva Manasa Puja.
Yes.
Now, when we say puja, what comes to mind?
Well, I mean, puja is really all about rituals, right?
Right, offerings and ceremonies.
Yeah, exactly. All the outward stuff.
But the Shiva Manasa Puja, this one's different, right?
This one is really unique because it's all about internal worship,
Really?
mental worship.
Okay, so no outward stuff at all.
No outward stuff. Think of it almost like a guided meditation in a way.
Okay.
You're not emptying your mind, though. You're filling it
Oh, interesting.
with powerful imagery and intention.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So how does this work? How does this mental worship actually play out?
Well, each verse of this hymn is like a step-by-step guide,
Okay.
and it takes you deeper and deeper into this experience.
Okay, so what's like the first step then?
So imagine you're sitting in quiet contemplation, right?
Okay.
And in your mind's eye, you begin to offer Shiva a seat.
But not just any seat. This is a seat studded with gems, fit for a king.
Ooh, very elaborate.
It is?
Is this about pleasing a deity who desires lavish gifts?
No, not really.
Hmm.
It's more about shifting your own mindset.
Yeah.
You're offering the best, the most valuable things you can imagine.
Okay.
And it's a way of acknowledging the reverence you hold for the divine.
Oh, so it's symbolic more than literal.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And this first verse is really setting the stage for deep internal practice. It's like you're preparing a space within yourself for this connection to unfold.
I see. And the hymn also mentions bathing Shiva with cool Himalayan waters and implying this fragrant sandalwood paste.
Right.
Is this part of creating that sacred space?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about purification and preparation. Cool water, it cleanses, it refreshes. Sandalwood has this very calming, grounding effect.
Yeah.
So it's like you're preparing your own soul in a way for this divine communion.
Yeah, it's interesting how specific these descriptions are in the hymns. You could almost feel that coolness of the water.
Right. Smell the sandalwood.
Yeah.
It almost feels like you're physically performing these actions.
And that's part of the beauty of this whole puja, It engages all your senses. You're not just imagining the act,
Right.
but you're experiencing it through smell, through touch, through sight. The hymn even goes on to describe offering these vibrant flowers, the fragrant smoke of incense. It's about creating a full sensory experience within your mind.
So by engaging all of those senses, are we deepening the experience of the mental worship?
Exactly. The more vivid you can make it, the more immersive and powerful this practice becomes. It's not just about reciting words.
Right.
It's about fully embodying the act of worship.
Okay, so far we've offered this very luxurious seat, refreshing bath, fragrant perfumes, all within the space of our minds. What comes next?
Well, as any good host, would you offer a feast?
Okay, so now we're talking mental food offerings.
Mental food offerings.
What kind of feast are we imagining here?
Well, we're talking rich, clarified butter. We're talking sweet rice pudding, a mix of milk and curd and banana. It's all there, laid out beautifully on a golden plate studded with gems.
Now you're making me hungry.
Yeah.
But what's the deeper significance behind this
Yeah.
offering food in this context? Are we trying to feed a hungry God?
Well, remember, this is mental worship, right? So we're talking about an internal process. The food offerings aren't about feeding a physical being. They represent the fruits of your labor, the best of what you have to offer,
Right.
as a symbol of your devotion and gratitude.
So it's about sharing the bounty of your life, both material and symbolic, with the divine.
Exactly.
Okay.
And again, you see the detail in the hymn. You can almost taste the sweetness of that rice pudding, the richness of the clarified butter.
Yeah.
So again, it's all about engaging your senses to enhance that experience.
I love how this takes something that, could be very abstract, this worshiping a deity in your mind,
Yeah.
but makes it so relatable, even if someone has never practiced Hinduism.
And that's the power of this hymn. It's meant to create this tangible experience within the vast landscape of your mind.
Okay, so far we've offered the seat, we've offered the bath, the perfumes, and a delicious feast.
We have.
Again, all within our minds.
All in the mind.
What happens next?
Well, in the third verse, the mental worship takes an even more elaborate turn.
Okay, this is getting interesting.
It's as if the devotee is throwing a party for Shiva, complete with music and dancing.
Whoa, okay, tell me more.
Imagine offering a canopy to provide some shade fans, to provide a cool breeze, even a shining mirror. It's like you're creating this royal welcome, this space of beauty and comfort fit for a divine being.
So it's not just about the offering itself, but it's the whole experience. Like all the
Exactly.
sights, the sounds, the
The
feelings.
whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And the hymn goes on to describe filling this space with the sounds of traditional instruments. The veena, the bari, the mridanga, all blending together in this harmonious symphony.
Wow.
There's even the suggestion of celestial dancers moving gracefully to the music.
So it's a full-blown celebration
It is.
of the divine.
Yeah, quite a contrast to the quiet contemplation of that first verse.
It is. It is. So in the Shiva Manasa Puja, we're expressing our devotion in a way that feels authentic to us.
Exactly.
And in this verse, it seems like that expression is being taken to a whole new level.
It is. This is where you create a vibrant, celebratory atmosphere within your own mind.
It's like welcoming Shiva into this joyful festival
Exactly.
within your own consciousness.
And through this joyful celebration, that sense of surrender to the divine can more fully emerge.
Okay, so we've moved from those basic necessities, to this incredible celebratory experience.
We have.
All within the mind.
All within the mind.
Where does this journey of the Shiva Manasa Puja lead us next?
Well, the hymn continues to unfold in unexpected ways.
Okay.
And it brings the practice of devotion even closer to home. In the next verse, the lines between the act of worship and everyday life really start to blur.
I'm intriguing. How does the hymn make that shift?
Well, instead of offering these external objects, the devotee begins to see their own body and their actions as offerings.
So the body itself becomes a temple.
That's exactly what this verse proposes. The devotee proclaims, "O Lord, you are my Atma, my soul. Devi Jirija, the Divine Mother, is my buddhi, my pure intellect.
Wow.
The Shiva Ganas are my prana, and my body is your temple."
So instead of creating that elaborate external space, the devotee turns inwards and recognizes that divine presence within.
Yes, and it goes even further than that. Everyday actions become acts of worship. So walking becomes circumambulation around the deity.
Okay.
Sleep becomes the state of deep meditation. Even speaking transforms into a way of praising Shiva.
So it's not just about setting aside time for worship.
Right.
It's about bringing that awareness and intention into every single moment of your life.
That's the beauty of this verse. It reminds us that the sacred can be found in the mundane. Even the most ordinary actions can become an offering when infused with the right mindset.
I love that. The divine isn't separate from
Right.
it, but it's woven into every aspect of our being.
Exactly. And by recognizing that inherent connection, the Shiva Manasa Puja takes us on this journey towards a deeper understanding of our place in the universe.
This has been incredible so far. We've explored the beauty and the depth of mental worship, from offering lavish gifts to transforming our everyday actions into sacred rituals.
It's quite a journey.
But there's still more to this hymn, right?
Yes, there is. And in the final verse, the hymn takes a surprising turn. It confronts a reality that we often shy away from, the reality of human fallibility.
Okay, I'm all ears. What do you mean by that?
Well, after these profound declarations of devotion, the fifth verse serves as a confession of sins.
Oh, wow.
It's an acknowledgement that even with the purest intentions,
Yeah.
we as humans, we make mistakes.
That feels incredibly relatable. Even in the midst of this, idealized act of mental worship, there's that recognition of our own imperfections.
Exactly. And it speaks to the compassionate nature of Shiva as depicted in this hymn. The devotee lists all the ways that they may have fallen short, whether through their actions, their words, their thoughts, even things done unknowingly or out of habit. It's a raw and honest moment of self-reflection.
It almost feels like the devotee is laying bare their shortcomings before the divine, asking for that forgiveness and understanding.
Precisely. And it's important to note that this act of confession isn't about wallowing in shame or guilt.
Right.
It's about recognizing our humanness and seeking refuge in the divine grace of Shiva.
So there's an element of acceptance there.
Yes.
Recognizing that despite our imperfections, we are worthy of forgiveness and love.
That's at the heart of this final verse, surrender. The devotee acknowledges their flaws, asks for forgiveness, and ultimately surrenders to the will of Shiva, the ocean of compassion.
What a beautiful way to conclude this journey of mental worship. This deep dive has been incredible. We've explored the power of that mental worship, the symbolism of the offerings, the transformation of everyday actions into those sacred rituals, and ultimately the importance of surrender and forgiveness.
And it's all contained within this one ancient hymn, the Shiva Manasa Puja.
Amazing.
It really offers a timeless roadmap for connecting with the divine within, regardless of your background or your beliefs.
It's fascinating, and I'm sure our listeners are already thinking about how these teachings might apply to their own lives.
Oh, I'm sure. There's a lot to unpack here, and we'll definitely be exploring some of these ideas in more depth
Yeah.
as our deep dive continues. But for now,
We'll leave you with this. If every action, as the Shiva Manasa Puja suggests, can be an act of worship,
mm,
how might that shift your approach to your everyday life? What would it look like to infuse even the most mundane moments with that intention and a sense of the sacred?
it's something to ponder, isn't it?
It is.
And perhaps to experiment with.
Join us for part 2 of this deep dive as we continue exploring the profound teachings of the Shiva Manasa Puja. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Shiva Manasa Puja. You know, as we were talking about that last verse, I've been thinking a lot about, the idea that even our imperfections can be offered to the divine. There's something so humbling and also liberating about that.
I agree. It's a really powerful reminder that, true spirituality, it's not about some unattainable state of perfection.
Right.
It's really about embracing our humanness, flaws and all, and recognizing that even in our shortcomings, we can still find that connection and that grace.
And this hymn, written centuries ago, offers such a profound exploration of that whole journey.
It does.
I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit more about the historical context,
Sure.
in which the Shiva Manasa Puja was written?
Well, the Shiva Manasa Puja, it was composed by Adi Shankaracharya,
Okay.
who was a philosopher saint who lived in 8th century India.
Okay.
And this was a time of incredible intellectual and spiritual ferment. There were all these different schools of thought, all debating the nature of the divine and, what is the path to liberation.
So is this hymn considered radical for its time?
In a way, yes. I mean, outward rituals and temple worship were very prevalent, but Shankaracharya, he really emphasized the importance of internal transformation and a direct connection with the divine.
So it's like he was saying you don't need these elaborate ceremonies or expensive offerings to connect with the divine. You can do it anywhere, anytime within the space of your own mind.
Exactly. And this idea of mental worship, as it's articulated in the Shiva Manasa Puja, it really democratizes spiritual practice because it makes it available to everyone, regardless of their social standing or their material wealth.
Yeah. And that message feels so relevant for us today.
Yeah.
In our modern world, we're constantly bombarded with those external distractions, pressures.
So easy to get caught up in the material world.
Yeah.
And forget about that inner journey.
And the Shiva Manasa Puja is like a powerful antidote to that.
It is.
It's that invitation to turn inwards,
Yeah.
to cultivate a space of stillness and contemplation, even amidst all the chaos of modern life.
Right. And it reminds us that true peace and fulfillment, they don't come from those external possessions or achievements, but from within.
So for someone who has never practiced mental worship before, what would you say are some of the key steps to get started?
Well, first and foremost, find a quiet space where you won't be disturbed for a while.
Right.
And once you've created that space, it's about tapping into your imagination, engaging your senses, and really immersing yourself in the act of offering.
And the hymn itself can serve as a guide, right?
Absolutely. You can visualize each offering as it's described in the Shiva Manasa Puja,
Yeah.
Feel its texture, smell its fragrance, even taste its essence.
So it's bringing those offerings to life within our own minds.
Exactly. And remember, there's no right or wrong way to do this.
Okay.
You don't need to use Sanskrit or any specific language.
Right.
You can use your own words, your own understanding to express that devotion and connect with the divine.
So it's about creating a personal connection in a way that feels authentic for you.
That's the beauty of mental worship. It's adaptable to your individual needs and preferences. It's a very personalized spiritual practice.
This deep dive has been eye-opening for me. I think anyone could benefit from exploring mental worship,
I think so too.
regardless of their background or beliefs.
It's a practice that really transcends religious boundaries. It taps into this universal human longing, I think, for connection, peace, and meaning. And it's fascinating to see how this concept of inner contemplation and visualization appears in different spiritual traditions.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you give some examples of that?
Sure. Well, in Buddhism, there's a practice called visualization meditation,
Okay.
where you focus your attention on a particular image or deity. And it's a way of using mental imagery to train the mind and access deeper states of awareness.
So the Shiva Manasa Puja isn't this isolated concept. It resonates with practices found in other spiritual paths around the world.
Exactly. And it makes sense when you think about it. I mean, the human mind is incredibly powerful.
It is.
Our thoughts, our beliefs, our intentions, they have a profound impact on how we experience life.
Speaking of the power of the mind, are there benefits to practicing mental worship
Hmm.
beyond, the spiritual aspects? Could it actually impact our mental or emotional well-being?
That's a great question. And while more research is definitely needed,
Yeah.
studies suggest that these practices like meditation and visualization, they can be incredibly beneficial.
What kind of benefits are we talking
Now,
about?
they can help reduce stress and anxiety.
Okay.
They can increase focus and concentration.
Hmm.
They can even boost feelings of compassion and well-being.
Wow.
It's like training your mind to cultivate this more positive and peaceful state.
So it's not just good for the soul,
Right.
it's good for the mind and body as well.
Exactly. When you engage in mental worship, you're essentially training your mind to cultivate those positive emotions. It's like gratitude, compassion, a sense of connection to something larger than yourself.
Yeah.
And these mental and emotional shifts, they can have a ripple effect on your overall health and well-being.
This idea of mental worship and well-being, it makes me think back to the emphasis on surrender in the Shiva Manasa Puja,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in that final verse.
Yes. The devotee's plea for forgiveness and that ultimate surrender to the will of Shiva.
Right.
It speaks to this crucial element of any spiritual practice, letting go of ego,
Mm-hmm.
releasing our need to control, and trusting in something larger than ourselves.
Surrender can be a challenging concept, especially in a culture that really prizes individual achievement and control.
It is.
But it can also be incredibly liberating.
It can. It allows us to release that burden of perfectionism.
Right.
And embrace, the messy, imperfect beauty of being human.
Mm-hmm.
It's about letting go of those rigid expectations and trusting in the flow of life,
Yeah.
even when things feel uncertain or challenging.
It's like saying, okay, universe, I'm letting go. I'm trusting in your plan, even if I don't fully understand it.
And in that act of surrender, we often find a sense of peace and acceptance
Yeah.
that we wouldn't have found otherwise. It's recognizing that we don't have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We can allow ourselves to be held by something larger than ourselves.
That's a beautiful image.
Mm.
And for someone who is new to this concept of surrender, do you have any advice on how to begin cultivating this quality in their lives?
It all starts with awareness. Notice when you're clinging tightly to control, when you're resisting that natural flow of life,
Okay.
and then simply practice letting go.
Mm.
It could be as simple as taking a deep breath,
Yeah.
surrendering to the present moment, allowing yourself to just be without needing to fix or change anything.
So recognizing those moments of resistance
Right.
and choosing to soften, to trust that things will unfold as they should, even if it's not according to our own plans.
Exactly. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes. It's
Yeah.
like building a muscle, the muscle of surrender.
Yeah.
And as that muscle strengthens, you'll find that you navigate life's ups and downs with more grace and ease and resilience.
This has been such a rich and thought-provoking conversation. We've gone from exploring the specific verses of the Shiva Manasa Puja to discussing these broader themes of surrender, trust the human experience.
It is fascinating.
It's amazing how much wisdom is found in this one ancient hymn.
It is. It reminds us that search for meaning and connection, it's timeless. And the tools for inner transformation, they've been passed down through generations.
Right.
The Shiva Manasa Puja is a testament to the power of ancient wisdom to guide us even in the midst of our modern world.
So as we move towards the final part of this deep dive, is there
Yes.
anything else that you think we should touch on
Mm-hmm.
before we wrap up our exploration of the Shiva Manasa Puja? It's interesting as we've been going through all of this, this idea that we've been talking about so much of the power of the mind.
Right.
And it's almost like, with our thoughts and our intentions, we're capable of creating this whole universe within ourselves.
It is fascinating, isn't it? And this idea isn't unique to Hinduism either.
Really?
You see it in a lot of spiritual traditions, both ancient and modern, this idea of the mind.
Shaping reality.
Taking reality, exactly.
Are there any other specific examples that you can think of?
Well, take Buddhism, for example.
Okay.
There's a concept called mindfulness, and it's all about, paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
Right.
And, the idea is that by becoming more aware of our thoughts and feelings,
Mhm.
we gain more control over our reactions, and we cultivate a more peaceful state of mind.
So it's like recognizing that our thoughts have power, but we don't have to be ruled by them.
Exactly.
We can choose to cultivate those positive and helpful ways of thinking.
Yeah, and this understanding is echoed in a lot of modern approaches to psychology as well.
Oh, interesting.
You think about cognitive behavioral therapy,
Right.
which is, focusing on identifying and changing negative thought patterns.
Yeah.
Or positive psychology, which emphasizes, cultivating gratitude and optimism and other positive emotions.
So there seems to be this growing recognition across different fields that our mental state really impacts our well-being.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the Shiva Manasa Puja, in its own way, was tapping into this understanding centuries ago
Wow.
by emphasizing mental worship. You know, it's basically saying we have the power to create that sacred space within ourselves,
Right.
no matter what's going on around us.
That's so empowering because it means that, you know, we're not at the mercy of our environment or our past.
Right.
We can choose to cultivate, you know, more positive emotions and create a more fulfilling life.
It all begins with that awareness,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing the power of our own minds and how our thoughts and intentions really do shape our experience.
It makes you wonder if we're constantly, you know, bombarded by negative news or critical self-talk or those limiting beliefs.
Right.
You know, it's no wonder we end up feeling stressed or anxious or just generally unfulfilled.
Yeah, exactly. But the good news is we can choose to shift our focus. Right.
And cultivate more, you know, positive and supportive thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It takes effort. It takes
Yeah.
practice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely possible.
And I feel like the Shiva Manasa Puja gives us some really beautiful tools for doing just that.
Oh, absolutely. The imagery, the devotion, the act of surrender.
Right.
It's all designed to elevate our mental state
Mm-hmm.
and connect us with, you know, something greater than ourselves.
And that connection, you know, that sense of belonging and purpose,
Yeah,
that's essential for our well-being.
it is. It gives us a reason to get out of bed in the morning, you know, face challenges and live a life that's full of meaning.
That's a beautiful message, I think, to leave our listeners with.
It is.
That we have the power within ourselves
Yeah.
to create a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
And it all starts with our thoughts and our intentions.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Shiva Manasa Puja, we encourage you to tap into that power of your own mind.
Yes.
Experiment with mental worship. Cultivate those positive emotions and really see how it can transform your life. The journey of self-discovery is ongoing. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to experience.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep diving deep.